This hot, this the spot. There it is, pod.com. We're interviewing the best comedians, so tune in quick and get your ears receiving them. We talking about life and laughter stream right to you, from the microphone right to your home, dude. Side note, this might get embarrassing, but no, don't sweat, yo, cause there it is.
Welcome to the There It Is podcast, a comedy podcast for lovers and dreamers and me. I'm your host, Jason Farr. Let's do this. Thanks so much for listening. If this is your first time listening, extra special thanks for listening. And if you want to find old episodes, you can on iTunes. They're also on SoundCloud. Just go to soundcloud.com/thereitispod. And you can go to thereitispod.com and find the old episodes and old vlogs that we've posted. And this episode is a fun one. I'm so glad that you're listening to it because it's with improviser and comedian Abby Russell. She is someone who works at giantbomb.com, which is a video game site. We talk a lot about that. But she also performs on a house team at the Magnet Theater here in New York City, and she's really great. She's wonderful. I love her. She's super funny, and we talk about improv, and we talk about comedy in general. It's a really fun chat, so check it out right now. Let's get right to it. Here's my chat with Abby Russell. Are you from Massachusetts? Aren't you from Massachusetts?
I lived in Massachusetts for a little while. I lived in Cambridge, which is just outside of Boston. I was there from when I was 14 or 15 until I was in my early 20s. I left for a little while to go to school at American University, but I dropped out after a semester and came back. So I was there for a little while, yeah.
Okay, cool. And you are a producer at giantbomb.com, but you're also an improviser at Magnet, and you perform weekly.
I am.
So both are big deal things. What do you consider yourself? Do you consider yourself an improviser or a producer? Or like a producer who does improv, like a...
I guess I would consider myself a comedian and I guess filmmaker, but producer. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's sort of what I consider myself. Although with Giant Bomb, sort of being a producer kind of goes hand in hand with being a comedian, just because I do a good amount of on-camera stuff. But I would say I consider myself a producer or an editor and a comedian.
Excellent. Okay. So... What was your childhood like in that? Were you getting involved in live performances or doing home videos that were a little bit more elaborate than the average kid's home videos? Like what was your childhood like? We
definitely did a lot of home videos, just goofing around, me and my sister. But as far as performing goes, I did dance for a number of years. I danced from when I was I think 8 or 9 until about 14 or 15. So that was like pretty regular performances. Got me used to being on stage in front of people. But as far as comedy stuff, I think my first real instance of it was at like a skit night at camp. I did just like this stupid, it was basically like a character sketch show. I was gonna compare it to something today. It was just like this stupid little skit night. And I did this one character that was really dumb, but got a lot of laughs, and I think I was kind of hooked on that. But it was one of those things where, I don't know, whenever my folks and I would travel, like my mom especially, we would go to just like touristy improv shows, and I always thought it was super fun, so something I wanted to do. And then when I moved back to Boston after being at American, I was sort of had a bit of a quarter life crisis and was like, I'm going to sign up for improv. And like, I literally signed up for a class the night before it started. And then the rest kind of snowballed, I guess.
Yeah. Where was that class?
That was at Improv Boston. That was with Emily Holland was the teacher.
I know Emily.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I think she's in LA now. Oh, no, she's not.
She moved to North. She was in LA. She was in LA.
Yeah.
She moved to North Carolina, and she is great. She's great on stage.
Yeah.
She's great off stage.
Yeah, she's very funny.
Yeah. And so you start doing stuff there, and eventually you migrate to New York. But was there any time in between where you were doing, like, how much improv were you doing when you were in Boston, and then as you made your way to New York? Were you?
I was doing a pretty good amount. I was taking all my classes in Boston, and most improv theaters, as you know, you have to take usually 4 to 6 classes before you can audition or anything. So I was going through the class program, and right as I finished my last class was when I moved to New York. But I was definitely very gung-ho with how I was doing improv. I was going to shows a lot, and I was also very proactive because I was also sort of doing it to be social. So I was very proactive about getting people to sign up, like the people who I'm in a class with, to continue to stay in the next classes as we go up the levels together. So we sort of became a bit of a team just through doing months and months of improv together, which was pretty fun. But we would do a ton of indie stuff outside of it. So I was performing semi-regularly, but I wasn't on a house team or anything. Yeah, it was fun. It was good. It was a good way to get my feet wet with it.
Yeah. And what spurred the choice to move to New York?
I moved for school. Because I originally went to American University, and so after high school, the month after I graduated high school, I moved out of my folks' house and just stayed in an apartment, and I deferred for a semester. So I spent about 6 months living on my own in my own apartment and just working full time. And I really loved that. So then I went to American University where I was in a dorm, and I really didn't like DC. I really didn't like American, and I really wasn't proactive about meeting new people, especially coming in halfway through the year. So I think I really felt like I regressed, and it was incredibly expensive, so my family couldn't really afford it. So I dropped out and went back to Boston to basically live with my old roommates and just go to community college until I could transfer again. And then at that point, I was sort of figuring out exactly what I wanted to do with myself. When I first went to school, I was considering going for aerospace engineering or maybe sound engineering. So it was sort of like, I don't know which one I want to do, but I wound up sort of falling more into sound engineering at American. And then I took a film class that I loved. And I was like, well, I should go into filmmaking. I did a ton of editing in high school. So I was like, I want to be an editor. So I figured I either have to be in New York or LA to work in film. So I came to New York, and that's sort of it. I transferred for school.
Okay. And how soon in your being in New York did you start doing stuff or doing improv?
Right. Well, I tried to pretty much right away. I remember my first week or so, the Magnet offers free intro to improv classes. And I saw that there was one with Rick Andrews. And I hadn't met Rick yet, but I knew that he had also started at Improv Boston. So I was like, okay, cool. I'll take this class with Rick, and I'll try to because I was house managing at Improv Boston as well. So I was like, I'll try to get a job house managing at the Magnet. And then eventually I'll have enough money to take class at the Magnet and UCB and all that stuff. So I took his class and was like, hey, like, I want to work. Is there a job? He's like, probably not, but you could intern. So I applied to be an intern, and I didn't hear back for like another 6 months. So I really didn't do improv of any kind in that period. And then 6 months in, I started interning, and then right away I was like, hey, I have house managing experience if you're hiring. A month later, they were hiring, so I became a house manager, and then I was there pretty much all the time after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot has already happened in your story by this point in your life. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. A lot of overload in these questions.
Oh, no. Don't be apologetic at all, because I think that's really interesting that, like, we all pack in a lot of life in a short amount of time, and you know, the farther you maybe get away from things, the easier it can seem like, I didn't do anything, but you really did so much, and you learned so much.
Yeah, and it was also a very transitional period for me these last few years, just with being in school and transferring twice. And I, finally now that I got this job and kind of am more settled in, like it's still definitely a transitional period in some respects, but it feels like the start of like maybe something a little more steady versus kind of school and sort of being like, well, what's my life going to be,
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll fast forward a little bit here. Of course, you were at Magnet. Did you study anywhere else?
Yeah, I've taken classes at the UCB Theater, so I finished their program a couple months ago, and I would like to audition eventually, but it's not a huge priority right now. And I also think the auditions aren't for another few months anyway.
And you're also on a house team at Magnet.
I am. I'm on the house team Youths, which is very fun.
Yeah, a fun team. And,
thank you.
So, I mean, what's the drive to also be on a team at another theater?
Well, I really love the Magnet, and honestly, since I got this job, I don't feel as much drive as I used to, just because before it was like, my eggs are a little spread out versus just in one basket, and I also sort of get that improv itch scratched with this job in a lot of ways, just with being on camera and just kind of, I feel like I do a lot of comedy here. So I feel very satisfied in that. But I would say, I don't ever want to be complacent or satisfied. I always want to be pushing myself to do more or to do different or to kind of just challenge myself, basically. I don't want to be stuck being like, yeah, this is good enough, because I don't think that it helps anything,
That's really great. That's a really good point of view. I think even with me, I think I could see myself, if I were to be able to get on a house team, I could easily see myself saying, well, I'm on a house team. I don't have to be in any rat race or anything. Like, this is great. But I can see the need to say, like, I should push myself. I should put myself in other areas just so I can stretch in a different way.
And I also will say, once you get on a house team, because I definitely have that goal of like, my next goal right now is just get on a house team. And I did that. My first house team at the Magnet was Barbara. And I got on Barbara and it was great. But then you just discover you have new goals, and I think that it changes with you. And I also think sort of the kind of veil is lifted once you're on a house team and you're like, oh, okay, this isn't that much different than what I was doing before. Like I think people put a lot of weight in improv house teams for like good reason. I think it's something that's awesome to achieve. It's super fun to do. I love doing it, but it's also, I am no different than someone who's not on a house team. You know what I mean? Like it's not big of a difference.
I think everyone, it's kind of, and this is a total tangent, but I think what people used to experience kind of 20 years ago or 15 years ago, if they got on a big TV show, so like a real big thing, people had that sort of experience. And now I think in this age of more access, whether it's online, we all are like mini celebrities online now, like whenever a tragedy happens, we always craft a statement. It's kind of like, really, who am I?
Yeah.
Why am I crafting a statement? And then also that kind of happens in different ways now because there's so much access to improv and comedy that there's all these DIY rooms and things, open mics and things, and people can kind of get big for their britches or too big for their britches, and they can say like, well, once I'm on that thing and I've made it, I'm a big deal.
Totally.
And then they get there and it's like, oh, okay, this really isn't. There's still more to do.
Yeah,
this
totally.
Really isn't what I thought it was, and so I just kind of feel like that's a thing that goes on. Like, there's more access to things, so there's like more wider kinds of people and. People from different backgrounds are experiencing these weird things like the cost of fame.
Yeah, totally.
For lack of
and
a
I think
better
it's
term.
also all about perspective, like if I'm on a house team at the Magnet, people might know who I am that I maybe haven't met just because they're students in classes and they're seeing shows or something like that. But like then I leave the Magnet and I don't have that clout anymore. And like it doesn't really matter. Even with this job, it's like there's sort of a niche video game audience who kind of maybe knows who I am. But for the most part, I'm still pretty anonymous. Like it's nothing is that different,
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you're the host of The Tonight Show or on SNL or Daily Show, well, really mostly SNL, I guess, people definitely know who you are because SNL just had a huge season. But then, honestly, there's still people who have no idea.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Like, there's really just a handful of people who have that high of a Q rating. Whereas, everybody else, they're just big in their bubble.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then their bubble gets burst and they don't know what to do with themselves.
Right.
So, like, really the thing is, what are we chasing here? And so it's pointless to chase fame or feeling like you're special. You should really chase just getting better at a thing that you love and acting out a passion and like doing stuff that inspires you. Like that's that's enough. You don't have to be famous.
And I also
to do
think
that.
like just enjoying your time is enough too. Like that's going back to sort of the house teams, like the improv house teams. I'll see people get cast on these teams and then they put so much weight and so much stock into it that they're not enjoying it. And it's like, then who cares? Like, that's stupid. I'd rather be on a fun indie team than like a garbage house team where everyone hates each other, you know?
Yeah, no, that's very true. And especially when, and I know in some scenes this happens where people are really cutthroat and stepping on other people so they can climb this totem pole that leads to nothing.
Yeah, totally.
In the grand scheme of things, they have hurt people and ruined their reputation for nothing.
Yeah.
So they can perform.
Totally.
They could perform for free in a basement somewhere.
Right.
You know, it's just kind of like, come on, man. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
People are weird. So you are also doing this thing that we've sort of talked about, giantbomb.com.
Mm-hmm.
You're producing there, and you're doing a lot of stuff there. You can explain better to the audience what you all do there than I can. So will you please?
Cool. Yeah. So I am an associate producer for Giant Bomb, and we are a video game journalism website. And journalism is very a loose term for us. It's very much like a personality-driven website. So we do a lot of like us on camera while playing games or playing games and maybe in a fun and a silly way. And it's all subscription based. So most of our content is behind a paywall with a few things here and there that aren't. But yeah, we're primarily it's a smaller company. I mean, we're owned by CBS Interactive, but as far as the number of people who work and are front facing, it's a smaller group. But yeah, it's a personality based website about video games, basically.
Awesome. How long has Giant Bomb been around?
Oh boy, I think almost 10 years. That's my understanding. I mean, I've only been here for four months now. I think I started in May, so around 4 months. But I think they've been around for around 10 years. I was talking to Vinny, who's my boss, and I think he was mentioning that the 10-year anniversary is coming up soon.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah, it should be fun.
That's another thing. It's like for video games, like 15 years ago, there used to be one place for it, and then that network was shut down. And now there are all these different places you can go and get your fix on video game stuff. And
totally.
Giant Bomb is a network essentially. Is one thing, and it's really made a lot of headway in putting stuff out there.
Yeah, totally. And you'll see people who like there's so many just YouTubers who have game accounts, or like even with something like Twitch or every PlayStation 4 you buy, you can automatically stream your gameplay out to Twitch. Like it's a very accessible thing to do to sort of have your own personality-based video game content, basicly.
That's super fun. So
yeah,
for the layman, can you explain a little what maybe someone would see if they get behind that paywall?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, it's a lot of like, usually we have a lot of long form stuff, so it's a couple hours long. A lot of it's unedited. We do a lot of live streams. So right now we have a feature going on called Steal My Sunshine, where we play Super Mario Sunshine, and every time you get a shine, which is sort of like the star, the goal of the level, so every time you get a shine, you pass the controller, or every time you die, you pass the controller. And the goal is to get the most shines. And right now we're using gumballs to kind of symbolize our shines. And it's whoever has the most at the end will win. So that's one feature we're doing. And another one we're doing is called The Exquisite Core, sort of a play on words of Exquisite Corpse, where one person is playing XCOM. And then the other person doesn't see the person before play, but they have the same save. And then they go and play it too. So it's not always like passing the controller like that. Sometimes it's just we'll play straight games. But those are a couple features that we have. But it's a lot of like, we're going to play a game and then we're going to talk over it to really distill it, I guess.
That's becoming, it's Giant Bomb's been around 10 years, so it's probably seen an uptick in who is interested in this. But I feel like that is a thing that has grown over time, of people being interested in watching people play video games, and it's still not entirely a common thing also, right? Like it's still, What I mean is I've watched a couple of walkthrough videos online just to sort of get a sense for a video. Really what it was before I could afford a PlayStation 3, but the Batman game was out. Right. I was like, well, I want to see what that game's like. And then I just got engrossed in some online YouTube video of it a while.
Right.
And my girlfriend has pointed out, like, to other people's like, yeah, Jason's watched videos on you, like people playing video games on YouTube. Like, that's a crazy person thing, right?
I mean, a ton of people do it. Like I do it. I did it before I got this job. Like I think there's something really captivating about seeing someone play a game. And I know for me personally, I really love YouTubers or just general people who, stream their game content. I like it when they're playing a way that I wouldn't play it. There's this streamer I really like called Many a True Nerd. He has a YouTube channel, but he played the entirety of Fallout New Vegas without killing anyone. And he played it like without ever healing. And this is like these weird challenges that I don't ever have the patience to do, but it's captivating to watch someone else do it.
Yeah. And there are a couple things about it that I think it sounds like you all have tapped into really well. What I've noticed that it's something that's going to continue to build and become more of a normal thing. Like right now, it seems like the average person would be like, huh, that's a thing? Watching people play video games. But
right.
I remember in college when some more long-form games started coming out. Like I was playing Shenmue back in the day, for anyone who is old like me. I was playing that, and there were some friends on the hall. They didn't want me to pass the controller. They just wanted to sit and watch. And a couple people were like, I hate playing video games, but this is like watching a movie, and I want to watch this
totally.
movie.
Yeah.
And then the other aspect of the thing that you all are really tapping into is kind of goes back to that experience I was just talking about. It's like this fun hangout.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, because it's such a personality-based thing, I think people definitely feel like they're hanging out with their friends when they watch a stream, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's not really that different than sitting and watching How I Met Your Mother marathons on WGN or something. You still just feel like, oh, here's something that feels familiar. I'm going to sit back and drink a beer, Yeah,
totally. And I even think there's, even though that people are watching us play, I think there is still somewhat of an interactive component to it. Just for, live streams, we'll have the chat open so people can be talking in the chat. And there's already sort of a community of people on the site who kind of have each other as well. And, we'll pop in here and there and chat back. But I do think that there is, an aspect to it that's also very much it feels inclusive to someone who's watching it versus something like a scripted show, which feels very separate from you.
Oh, yeah. And it's it is a little more interactive, and it's still like that sort of, I'm here to relax, but there's also this added, I can say something to them and they'll respond while this is happening.
Yeah, totally.
That sounds super fun.
Yeah, it is. I feel very fortunate to be working here. It's definitely, it's a lot of fun, and I work with a lot of really great people, which is always a big plus.
I am not a gamer. I like video games. But I just, for whatever reason, as I got older, I'll go months without, did I say that right? I feel like I have cotton mouth. But I'll go months without playing a game. Games have advanced so much. There are a lot of things that I just don't do. I don't do online. I don't do.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that's some of your bread and butter. But
my life is online.
Right. The online stuff has gotten really, I think, exciting for people because it's expanded so much.
Yeah, totally. And you have so many different types of online games, which is pretty cool. But yeah, there's definitely, online games are great. And it even is great for someone who, like you, who said before you didn't have people who would want to play games with you. But if you could hook your system up to the internet, you would have a world of people who'd want to play games with you. I know so many people who have made games solely, have made friends solely through games, which is pretty rad.
Yeah. Yeah, and before I only knew of World of Warcraft, 12 years ago, that's all I knew. That was my concept of playing online, was World of Warcraft. And then like I played Red Dead Revolver after everyone else did, and the Batman games after everyone else did, and Grand Theft Auto maybe even a little bit after everyone else did. So when I got around to just saying, well, let's see what the online aspect of this is like, there is hardly anybody out there. And I was kind of like, well, do I really want to spend the time playing this? There's no one here to play. And they had already figured out all the cheats and
like have leveled up so much.
Well, I don't know what it was. Like, I was walking around in Red Dead and, like, I heard some kids talking, but you couldn't see them. You turn around, you can't see them anywhere. And then I don't know what they were doing. They were just, like, running around. It's like, all right, well, this feels like the actual Old West. Because there's no one around for miles and miles. And I'm just, this is going to be a long night. So I just turned it off. But, how are you seeing your improv expertise or skills being used in the giant bomb world?
Well, I mean, I think, especially when I first got started, I think improv really helps me to just be able to hold a conversation, because when I was first doing it, it is a personality-based thing. I was on camera. I was doing podcasts where I was literally just talking to my coworkers. I was getting to know them. And, it's a new job. A lot of there are all the awkward moments of any new job, but it's always a little different and a little scarier when it's in front of an audience. So I think improv sort of helped me be conversational and be comfortable with that. I also think improv helps me all the time just in my comedic timing and in sort of knowing when to make a joke and when to just kind of listen and see what other people are talking about or where the conversation's flowing. I also think doing a lot of improv helped me in the beginning when I was nervous to know that I didn't need to try to be funny. I didn't need to try to talk when I had nothing to say. I could just be content and be comfortable and know that eventually my time will come. And like, if I'm comfortable and if I'm being honest and like responding normally, then it'll be captivating and that's enough. Like, I think in improv, I see a lot of newer improvisers kind of feel like they need to constantly be talking or constantly be making jokes. And if they aren't getting laughs, they panic. But I think because I've done improv so long, I'm comfortable in those silences on stage and I'm comfortable when it's not necessarily funny right away. So I think that aspect also was a big help when I first started here, just in the sense of like, well, I'm comfortable to sort of let it be what it is and it will be funny. I just need to trust that it will be. Like, just me being myself is enough,
Yeah. I think that is such a huge thing for people to learn, and that is something that I've been taught, having been at Magnet myself for a little bit. And I remember even a workshop that I took with Jill Bernard. She was saying you are like kind of the point of the workshop was to say you are enough.
Yeah, totally.
And that is something like the people who are the best as stage performers, they are super comfortable with themselves and they are super comfortable with moments that mortify other people.
Right.
And there is this sort of presence that they have because of it, and they know how to like manage the situation. And there is that thing of just trusting like this can work. The only way it can work though is if I'm calm and myself and present in the moment.
Yeah, totally.
And if you're not present in the moment, being who you are, or at least being who you know you're supposed to be if you're doing an improv scene, then you're going to have a harder time. So just get present and kind of get out of your head and just sort of experience the moment, and you'll open up more. Very
totally.
easy to say, very hard to do.
Yeah, totally. But I do also think, as far as your stage presence comment before, I think having confidence on stage is like 75% of being good at improv. I think it was Jason Mantzoukas. I heard a quote from him being like, you tell the audience what's funny. And I think that's so true, is like, if you say something and you have the confidence behind it, the audience is going to be like, okay, sure, I like that. Like, not to condescend the audience. They're usually very smart and will definitely let you know when something's not funny.
Oh, yeah.
But I do think
just hack, you can't say, no, but this is funny.
Right.
That's
but like, I think if you have,
can learn.
Totally.
You are telling them this is funny, but through confidence, not through after a joke bomb saying like, oh, I don't know why y'all didn't like that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. But I think just having the confidence, and that totally relates to sort of my job here, is like having confidence on streams to know like, okay, this is fun and captivating, and like I'm not constantly being like, does chat like it? You know, I think that totally helps.
So I did see a clip, and I watched it a couple of times because it just cracked me up. It's a recent clip that you posted on Twitter, or somebody posted on Twitter and tagged you, and you were parachuting in.
Oh, right.
And it was your shot. It wasn't anyone else's shot. But you could hear them because they were a little ahead of you, and they started getting shot up by some guy on top of a building, and you landed right by that guy who was shooting your teammates, and then you go to run and get him, and you just fly off the building. So like you just jump off the building.
Well, I tried to jump and punch him, but I overshot the landing a little bit, and you know what? It's okay. That's all right. Yeah, that was a clip from a feature we have called Murder Island, where we play PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. So we're all playing this game together, and it's sort of like a battle royale thing where we all want to be the last person standing, basically. Anyway, I died shortly after.
That was so funny. Where can people see some of the content that's not behind the paywall? Is that all on giantbomb.com, or do you have a YouTube page as well?
Yeah, we link to both just the Giant Bomb website as well as the YouTube page. So I recommend checking out the website. You'll see all of our stuff. But we do have a YouTube page. All that stuff is free. Definitely check it out. Primarily our free content are quick looks, which is sort of like our version of game reviews, at least video game reviews, where we will do... we'll just play a game for, usually like a half hour to an hour, and just kind of talk about it. And usually one person is playing it and kind of has played it before, is familiar with it, and everyone else is kind of asking questions and sort of experiencing the game for the first time. So it's kind of a nice way to sort of get a feel for what the game is like without doing like a written review. Like I think it does a really good job of being like, oh, is this a game for me? I'll watch someone play for a little while and be like, maybe not, or maybe so.
That's very cool. I think that's a good idea. I was also mentioning Twitter a minute ago, so I was wondering, with your Twitter, you have a lot of followers. You're really funny on there.
Thank you.
Do you have a certain approach when it comes to just writing these hilarious tweets, or are you just kind of jotting down quick ideas and then just taking the ones that you think are the funniest and putting them out there?
I think it's a mix of stuff. A lot of it is usually like I will have a real life experience and then I will find a funny spin on it. Or usually it's like I'll just have a funny thought sometimes, and then I'll like maybe cater it a little bit better so it reads better and reads more as a joke. But usually it's like I experienced something or I observed something that seems a little bit unusual. And I just try to find a way to contextualize it and make it into a tweet. But yeah, I mean, it's just sort of, I really like Twitter a lot because it's made me a much better joke writer.
Yeah.
I like that Twitter forces you to basically have like no more than 2 sentences. And I think those are the best kind of jokes where it's just like, I'm just going to really punch you with this great joke. And there you have it. Yeah.
That's true. I still wish 140 characters just seems so arbitrary. I know that they picked that because when Twitter started, you had to text in your tweets, and most phones only allowed 140 characters. So I get that. But it's 2017, right? Like, can you give us
No, 140 characters is perfect. No way.
I'm always 15 off and have to like make some sort of grammatical errors to make it work.
Right.
And it's not like too wordy of a thought. It's just 7 to 15 characters too long.
Right.
And I
don't know. I love Twitter. I like that it makes me like proofread and really be critical of my jokes. So it's like, okay, this joke's too long or it's too wordy. Like, let me really just distill it down to exactly what I want to say.
I've heard Conan O'Brien say the same thing about Twitter, and that's something I like about Twitter as well. I'm just not great at writing jokes like that. I don't,
Right.
everyone's writing jokes on Twitter. It's a lot of stuff that if you're talking about topical things that you're going to be one in a million saying something if you're being topical. But
Right.
I still want to be able to master the 2-sentence structure of a joke, like get something
Right.
that's short and sharp and a good thought, and anyone who reads it can say like, oh, okay, that's good, or laugh.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think the key to Twitter is just to do it every day. Like I try to tweet at least once every day, and sometimes it's super easy. Sometimes I'll have a lot in the backlog, or I'm just like doing a lot, so I have more material to work with. And other days it's sort of I really have to force it, which is like a really stupid thing to say about Twitter, that I'm like really working hard to like tweet something out. But I do think that's sort of a good rule for any kind of art form, is just do it regularly and force yourself to do it even when you don't feel inspired, because that's how you're going to get better, and that's the only way to keep doing it. And if you like force yourself to do it, it's going to make it so much easier to then find moments where you're like, oh, that's a good tweet, or that's a good joke, or whatever,
True. I will also say that I've noticed something you do on Instagram, in your Instagram story. You'll be showing whatever, and you're in the shot, and then you always zoom in on your eye.
Yes.
You do a slow zoom in on a one eyeball. What's the story behind that? It's hilarious. I've always liked it. I just wonder what made you come up with it.
I think I started doing that the first time. I was very against Instagram stories. I don't like that everything's sort of becoming Snapchat. I feel like Facebook is doing the same thing, and I'm like, who cares?
Yeah.
But I think I did that the first time because I wasn't sure what it was. So I was just looking at my camera, messing around, and I realized you could zoom in. So I was just like zooming in and goofing off. And then I accidentally posted it because I didn't know how to use it. So I was like, well, this is my thing now, I guess. And then I also just like the consistency of it. I think it's interesting. Yeah. I don't know. It's sort of like a weird art piece for me. I just like that it's a consistent joke. And I also don't feel like I'm particularly good at Instagram. So it's like, whatever, I don't care.
No, I think that's great. That's super fun.
Thank you.
Now, just to go back to talking about improv for a second, do you have since we're talking about approach to things now, is there a certain thing that you like to generally bring into your characters or into the theme of a show you're performing? Is there some sort of style or a thought process or point of view that you found that you have?
I would say I definitely play big characters most of the time. I play a lot of big characters. I play usually heightened emotions. I usually try to always play it at a 10, kind of crank it up. And then I try to focus a little bit on relationship. And I would say I'm also like a very goofy and silly performer. But I think primarily I play a lot of characters and I play really heightened emotions. So in scenes, I just try to focus on really having quote unquote honest reactions to stuff. I think improv is generally bad when people don't care about what's going on in a scene.
It's the worst when people are
it's
not.
Bad.
When it's either, and that happens in two different ways. It's either they're trying to be really big and they're really just hammy actors.
Right.
And so they're not invested at all. Or the people who just are lazy and don't want to try. And they're not doing anything.
Right. And I think there's, I don't know if it's always laziness. I think there's also folks who are very polite or who are very mild-mannered in person. And like, I know that I am that way in person, and it took me a lot to sort of overcome that with improv. But with improv, I think that you can't be mild-mannered about anything. And I think that you really, you just can't like half care about something, and you can't like be like, oh, sure, that's fine. Like, because it's boring to watch, but it's also not going to do anything for the scene. I also think in improv, a lot of times you'll have heightened scenarios where it's like, oh, I'm going to jail. And if the other person is like, whatever, then it's like, well, you're not really treating that with the level of realism it deserves. Or even if it's like, oh, aliens are coming down. It's like, yeah, this is a ridiculous and absurd thing to be dealing with. But you should still treat it with some emotional weight. Otherwise, nothing will matter in the scene, and it just is not going to work.
I can have some patience for people who are frightened out of their minds to be up there, because they're doing the same stuff that we're calling out, but they're doing it for a different reason. So I'm not necessarily criticizing them, but all of them are not helping. And really, honestly, responses to things are some of the most important, if not the most important thing to happen in a scene. Like it can't really go anywhere if you're saying, "Oh my gosh, aliens are coming," and I'm like, "Oh, all right,
yeah, totally.
What do we do?" Then
Right.
it's not the weight is already gone out of the scene. It's kind of like I tweeted something out about this on the There It Is Twitter account. I retweeted somebody pointing out how Dwayne Johnson would sell the crap out of like Stone Cold Stunners and stuff.
Right.
And it was like they showed clips of like they did this little clip of all these different times he responded. He had these huge flops to it. And those were moment making things. And it really had to do with how you respond to it, because there's a build up. That's the crescendo of a wrestling thing. Like this bad guy, the heel, is almost about to win, and he's, oh wait, the table's turned, and the victor is the good guy, and he really put him on his ass. Like that sells the crap out of the moment when you respond like it matters, or respond really
totally
big.
And you need that payoff.
Absolutely. And you can't escalate. Like if The Rock was just going down, then it's not escalated.
Right.
You know, it doesn't even show that anything has escalated up to that point.
Yeah, totally.
There isn't a big moment. There isn't a big...
Yeah.
You know, it's like if someone was chopping down a tree and then the next thing is just laying on the ground and you didn't hear it break and fall over, it doesn't feel like anything happened.
Right, totally.
And that's the same with an improv scene, you know? Like there still has to be this response to what has been put out there. I mean, we all say yes and, but it's not just say yes and then it's really respond in a way that makes the thing that your scene partner is putting out there a real thing that has weight to it.
Yeah, totally. Like you want to be honest and you want to have like a real weighted reaction, and you want things to matter in improv, because oftentimes people treat them like they don't, and it's just like, well, the scene is boring, it's not going anywhere. Like I want things to matter. Right.
Yeah. That's a good thing to cultivate, and that's one of the things I'm really trying to work on while I'm here is feeling present. And I think part of something feeling like being present in the moment is for what your scene partner does to matter and to really be something that affects you.
Yeah, totally.
Magnet's a great place to learn that sort of thing, I think. I think there are a lot of great performers you can see, and then the instructors really instill that. So,
yeah, totally.
Yeah. One thing I probably should have asked, but this sort of talk made me think of it. When you're doing stuff with Giant Bomb, I mean, it's a video game, and a lot of times those, a lot of the games have their own built-in story, so you don't have to think about a narrative yourself when you're interacting with your fellow players in the game.
Right.
But is there any sort of thought process to building up things or creating an escalation so there can be a payoff at the end on your side of it? Or does the video game kind of do all that?
I mean, it's, the video game does a certain amount of it, but it really depends on what we're working on.
Right.
So I try not to force anything, just because it should be very conversational and it should be very natural and very much like us being us versus us playing characters, maybe like a slightly heightened version of us. But for the most part, I think we're all playing ourselves. But so I don't really try to set anything up as far as that stuff. But usually the way our content is structured, I mean, sometimes it's really just a conversation. Like we have this feature called Blue Bombing, which is where one person, my coworker Alex, is playing through all of the Mega Man series. And it's just sort of became something where he's playing Mega Man. We can only really talk about so much of Mega Man. So it just winds up being, we sort of talk about anything else. So I think the last episode we talked about like what makes a masterpiece. What is a masterpiece really on like a very broad and very specific sense? Like what is a masterpiece? So it's like some content like that is like very conversational. So you're not necessarily going to have that quote unquote payoff.
Right.
Whereas others, I wasn't here for this. My coworker did this series. I think it was called Mario Party, where they just played through all of the Mario Party games. And a lot of people hated them. But my one coworker loved them. So it was sort of, he was kind of the heel to their Mario Party games. And that paid off in a different sense because these are competition games. And sometimes he would lose in like these spectacular ways and vice versa. So I think that there can be a payoff in some ways, but we try not to force anything. We let it happen naturally. And if the feature isn't working, then it's usually like it's not because necessarily we didn't bring enough to the conversation. It's usually more like, well, maybe these games just aren't so interesting, so it's hard to maintain anything while we're playing them or whatever. There just isn't enough interest from, the public, I guess.
I think it's something that can become what like an ESPN is. Because to a certain degree, talking about sports all day can, to some people who maybe they like sports or maybe they hate sports, but to some people they might go, really? Was there that much to say?
Right.
But, for some people, they're insanely passionate about it. And
yeah, totally.
So I feel like you can get into the nuances of these things. Like you can talk about the artistry behind the video game, which is pretty amazing. And then the programming behind the video game, which is also pretty amazing.
Yeah. And I mean, I think with games, people sometimes see it as sort of a pop art or like very low art. But I do think there are some games that certainly are maybe not totally high art, but can get up there. And I think it's definitely an art form in the same way like a book or a film is. And it's good to have these mediums like Giant Bomb and other gaming websites where they treat it with the respect of an art form. And they can really discuss like the nuances, like you were saying, of it as an art form. And a lot of what we do is sort of goofy and kind of silly, but we do take it seriously as well. And you'll see that, I think, more in the podcasts that we do. But, we do take these games seriously because a lot of people do, and it's a big part of a lot of people's lives. So I think that that's really important to treat it with the respect that it deserves, especially considering how big the gaming industry is nowadays.
Yeah, and I think it can only get bigger, especially when you see all the technology that's coming out. We just went to Samsung yesterday and did the VR stuff.
Oh, cool.
Like, the amount of stuff that you're going to be able to do in the future, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Totally.
Of fun. Well, this is a good time to start winding down here, I think. This has been really great. So let's try to create something here. I don't know. Maybe we could come up with an idea for a video game or for a video game program, so to speak, for like something like a Giant Bomb. Or what were you thinking?
I was thinking maybe compose a tweet.
Oh, yeah.
That might be too simplistic. I would say I don't know a ton about making games. That feels a little out of my realm of expertise, but I would be totally down for coming up with a hypothetical sort of content idea if you'd like.
Well, I have seen a couple of videos online of people doing basically comedy bits on their on like an online game. Like they took GTA, but they had their characters, and then they were just kind of walking around and talking to each other, and it was just like watching Real Housewives or something like that, but it was video games.
Yeah.
And so that kind of stuff is fun. I just don't know enough about what is out there to come up with an idea of like, how could you do like an improvise, like what if, so there's the Comedy Bang Bang exists. It's like a talk show, a radio talk show with improv. Like the whole thing is just improv.
Right.
What if there was a like video game that was improvised? Like I'm sure somebody's thought of this already.
I mean, I know, I don't remember the name of it. Oh man, I wish I did. There was one game that we did a quick look for before I started working here that was basically, I think it was sort of like you were in this bar and you were like trying to solve a mystery or something, but you could like type in and then it would do like type to voice, and then these robot voices would talk to each other. So you're playing with a bunch of other real people, and it's sort of like type to speak type stuff. So that was sort of an aspect that's a little bit improv-y.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then also, so one thing that I really love it's like just completely goofing off in a video game. I think a lot of people do. I think that's why GTA got so big. Because you could deviate from the story and just run around town and do nutty stuff.
Yeah, totally.
So if there is some sort of game where there are missions, or like we're going to go do this heist, which this exists. And so you do like your online buddies and you put together a heist, you sort of improvise it, but chaos ensues somehow because of just people being crazy or whatever. I feel like that could be fun. Like, and then you present it all like you'd have to edit, but you could present it like it's like Ocean's 11, or something like that. But yet it's just like these complete idiots are just running around and screwing up all the time.
Yeah, that sounds totally fun.
I don't know what we could call that.
I don't know. I feel like it needs a pun or something.
Yeah. I mean, Ocean's 11 is not bringing up
Lake
any
9
pun ideas.
Lakes 9.
Lakes 9. Peninsulas 3.
Perfect.
And I also do have some tweets. So let me just see here.
Great.
I don't know. My drafts, they're awful. But
that's the point of drafts. You know, a lot of my drafts are bad. I'll put some away that I'm like, okay, this is a winner. I just want to wait for prime time, or like I've already tweeted a bunch today. I also think people don't take advantage of their friends enough with Twitter. Like I send my tweets out to my friends all the time and be like, does this make sense? Like, is this joke funny? And like bouncing ideas off of people for any creative thing. But I think for Twitter especially can be really helpful, or just joke writing especially. I feel stupid like putting everything in the context of Twitter because Twitter's meaningless. Exactly. But I think it's made me a much better joke writer. So I think in the context of joke writing.
Yeah. I mean, I know you have a lot of followers and you get a lot of likes on there, but chasing likes and followers is the silliest thing.
Yeah, and you can't,
it's such an ego-driven thing.
Yeah, totally. And you can't like cater your Twitter to what you think people will want to hear. You just have to be sort of like we were saying before, you have to be honest with yourself and just be like, oh, this is something I think is funny. I have to trust that other people will think it's funny too. Exactly. Because I think anything else and people see through it.
And so the part that I think is very useful, even though it may sound silly to put time into what you're putting out on Twitter, is the learning to craft. It's just learning craftsmanship. Like, it's such a good thing.
Yeah, totally.
So that's the like benefit of it. And then you're putting out something that you think is funny that you crafted.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have this joke though. Why did NWA hate the police so much? What did Sting ever do to them? Roxanne is a great song.
I don't know what NWA is, so I feel like...
Well, like the old, remember the Straight Outta Compton?
Yes.
That NWA.
Okay.
Like Ice Cube's old band. And so they had that
okay,
song,
I get it. That's funny.
They had that song, F the Police.
Right.
And so I'm like, well, like, it's hard.
Why do they hate the police so much? I think I would get rid of the Sting stuff and just be like, Roxanne is a great song.
Okay.
Because Roxanne is police, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think that's enough. And I think, I think sometimes with joke writing, we want to kind of let the audience, like, make sure they get it. But I think most of the time they'll get it. Like, if you get it, they'll get it. Like, I think that's funny to be like, why does the NWA hate the police? Roxanne's a good song. Like, I think that's super funny.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Well, thanks so much. Let's call it there. There it is.
All right, awesome.
Great chat and a lot of
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Really glad. You're one of the first people I saw perform when I moved.
Oh, cool.
So,
wow, awesome.
Justine and I thought you were great. So.
Oh, thanks. I remember you did a mixer scene, and for those who don't do improv, a mixer is like basically anyone can get up and do stuff. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you're paired with like weirdos. But anyway, I saw you do a mixer scene that was very funny where it was just like, you just kept naming like different types of pies.
Yeah.
I don't remember anything else, but I remember that. I was like, oh, that's funny.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Super fun chat with Abby Russell, also known as Poop Russell. And, that's just an inside joke that only she will get. But anyway, folks, very fun chat. Hope you enjoyed that. You can follow Abby on Twitter. It's her name spelled backwards with an A and then Abby. So it's at YBBAAABBY on Twitter. And very fun stuff on there. You can also go to giantbomb.com and find out more info about her. Now, over the weekend, there was all the flooding and this ravaging that's going on right now, particularly in Houston, Texas. And if you want to donate to that, you can go to redcross.org, or you could text Harvey to 90999 to make a $10 donation. And it's a good cause. They have had trillions of gallons of water in Texas is dropping on there. They're expecting about 5 to 10 trillion gallons more by the middle of this week. So definitely keep them in your thoughts and prayers, and definitely donate if you can. And $10, that's not much. $5, you can do something like that. Every little bit counts. That's just a beer or two or a coffee. Just sacrifice a coffee for this week. Just one day of coffee, and you're helping people, and you're doing something. And listen, if you still need your coffee fix, you can just drink the office coffee. Or this is what you can do. You can go to a hotel that has a complimentary breakfast. You walk in there, you pretend that you are staying there, and you get yourself a coffee, okay? So help people in need by stealing coffee. That's the official word of there it is. No, not really. But definitely give if you can. Well, folks, we have a fun and interesting episode next week. We hope you are back for that. Until next time, be good to each other.
The music for the theme song was created by Neil Brooks. The rap was written and performed by Nick Acevedo. The logo for There It Is was created by Jeff Prater. The There It Is podcast is produced by Jason Farr.